WION, India's global voice, the channel that brings you the biggest stories from across the world through India's lens. Now available in more than 190 countries worldwide. Because we believe that the world is one. Watch us in Africa, Europe, USA and Canada, South America, Asia Pacific, Middle East and North African regions. Also available on these digital platforms across the world. WION. World is one.
Hello and welcome. You are watching Race to Power. I'm Eric Njoka. On the show today, Israel Prime Minister has told his government that he will change the face of West Asia dramatically. What are Bibi's power aspirations in the region? And will it come at the cost of a long-promised Palestinian statehood? And in South Korea, political drama is far from over. The opposition is fixated on impeaching the Prime Minister as well now, while Yoon Suk Yeol's future as president will now be determined by a court beginning this Friday. Welcome to the show. There is no clarity on the timeline on when Israel and Hamas will agree to a hostage and truce deal. But Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu already has a plan for a regional peace and normalization agreement. Bibi has put the focus back on the Abraham Accords during a parliament address. Netanyahu spoke of what he referred to as, quote, moderate Arab countries. He said to Knesset lawmakers that a revised Abraham Accords will change the face of the region dramatically.
The moderate Arab countries see Israel as a regional power and a potential ally for ensuring their security and the stability and prosperity of the entire region. I intend to seize this opportunity to the fullest. Together with our American friends, I plan to expand the Abraham Accords for peace and thus change even more dramatically the face of the Middle East.
Before the war in Gaza, a spillover conflict with Lebanon and the shadow war with Iran, Israel, with its ally US as the mediator, was well on its way to further normalization ties in West Asia. The Abraham Accords of 2020 was an important step for Israel to facilitate diplomatic ties with its regional neighbors. Before the Accords, only two countries had peace deals with Israel, Egypt and Jordan, signed in 1979 and 1994 respectively. It was only 4 years ago that Israel signed a slew of agreements with other Arab nations. In 2020, United Arab Emirates, Bahrain and Morocco signed deals brokered by the US to normalize relations with Israel and put trade agreements in place. With respect to Sudan, the country is part of the Abraham Accords, but certain details are yet to be finalized. While governments in West Asia opened up their diplomatic relations with Israel, many have criticized the Abraham Accords, that is the Abraham Accords, and the Arab nations for sidelining the clause of Palestinian statehood, which Arab leaders said they would leverage as part of the agreement. In the past few years, rising Israeli settler violence and raids in occupied West Bank have drawn flack from many. And since October last year, the dire condition of Gaza and volatility in the West Bank has sounded an alarm over the need for Palestinian statehood. With Netanyahu speaking of changing the face of West Asia dramatically and singling out so-called moderate Arab minors or nations, there are urgent questions on what it means for a legitimate, internationally recognized Palestinian statehood. Scott Lucas is a professor of international politics at Clinton Institute, University College Dublin. He's now joining us from London. Scott Lucas, thank you for making time for us. First of all, let's just start with what Netanyahu is saying, that he will change the Abraham Accords dramatically. What do you make of his comments? Let's start from there.
Netanyahu's comments, which were made to Israel's parliament, the Knesset, are political spin. We need to understand that Netanyahu, who is involved in this open-ended war in Gaza and until recently in Lebanon, who is involved in the expansion of Israeli territory in Syria, he wants to stay in power. He doesn't want early elections. He does not want to face the legal consequences of the bribery trial that is ongoing against him right now. So what does he do? He says, I can remake West Asia. Now, part of the context for this is that Donald Trump is returning to Washington, to the White House. And of course, the Trump administration had promoted the Abraham Accords during its term. Fair enough. But to have Abraham Accords, you have to have partners. And the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco will all be very wary of links with Israel while the Gaza war is ongoing. In other words, if Israel is attacking the Palestinians and causing mass casualties, what Arab state wants to be seen sacrificing Palestine during a time of war? And behind those countries, importantly, is Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia, which had been amenable to normalization before the Gaza war, during Gaza has said that Israel is carrying out genocide and has said that the priority is a two-state solution. In other words, a recognition of Palestine that Benjamin Netanyahu has never been willing to give. So no, there is no prospect, unless there is a lasting Gaza ceasefire, that there will be a resurrection of the Abraham Accords.
Mr. Scott Lucas, let's talk about something else that is causing concern, and this is the normalization with Arab nations. We are seeing the involvement of Syria right now. What do you think that will do, or what are the ramifications of this, or the significance of this talk of normalizing relations with Arab nations, which include Gaza?
Normalization in that sense is a diversion from what is happening in Syria for two reasons. I think the first thing is that the priority is that you get a Syria which is stable from the inside. We're still in the process of a transitional government being formed, but the leading faction, Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, has been pragmatic so far. They've been pragmatic in maintaining security. They've been pragmatic in calling for no discrimination against minorities. And they've been pragmatic in terms of the priority of reconstruction. So their outreach to other countries is not, concerned as much with Israel and normalization. It's concerned with getting reconstruction aid, whether that's from Turkey, whether that's from the Gulf states, whether that's from other countries, such as India. But the second aspect of this is that Israel's not normalizing when it comes to Syria. Israel is actually adding to instability by expanding its zone of occupation in southwest Syria. And only a few days ago, Benjamin Netanyahu sat on the top of Mount Hermon, one of the tallest points in Syria, and effectively claimed it as Israeli territory, promising to double the number of settlers in the area. So no, normalization, even if that was to occur with Arab states, which I don't think it will, that is in contradiction almost to Israel grabbing territory within Syria.
All right, we'll have to leave this discussion there. Mr. Scott Lucas, thank you very much for your time and for talking to us today.
Thank you and your viewers.
Let's move on now. The political crisis in South Korea is far from over. After getting Yoon Suk-yeol impeached, opposition parties are now targeting the Prime Minister, who is also the country's acting president. All this just days ahead of court hearing of Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment.
Democratic Party will immediately start taking steps to impeach acting rebellion leader Han Duk-soo, we will put out residual fire of rebellion. It is wrong to say 2/3 of the lawmakers' agreement is needed for the impeachment of Han Duck-soo. Even though his duty has been suspended, Yoon Suk-yeol is still the president. There cannot be two presidents, and Han was not elected by people.
The main opposition party says that through impeachment, it will put out the, quote, residual fire of rebellion. This was a reference made to suspended President Yoon Suk-yeol's brief order to impose martial law in South Korea on December 3rd. Although Yoon Suk-yeol repealed the order and later apologized, it sent shockwaves throughout the country as opposition sets the pitch in motion against remaining top leaders of the ruling party. The Constitutional Court is set to hold the first public hearing on Yoon Suk-yeol's impeachment case. The hearing will be held on Friday in order to determine if he will be removed from office. For the time being, Yoon Suk-yeol's presidential powers have been suspended, but formally he still remains in office. The court has a deadline of 180 days to decide within 180 days whether to remove Yoon Suk-yeol from office or reject the impeachment and restore his powers. If the court decides to remove Yoon Suk-yeol, South Korea needs to hold a presidential election within 60 days. We are now joined by senior journalist Soo Young-oh from Seoul. Miss Soo Young, thank you very much for joining us at this hour. We are now seeing that the opposition is against the Prime Minister. What are the ramifications of this decision by the opposition in South Korea?
Well, yes, as you said, the opposition, they decided to adopt a motion for impeachment, which they'll be trying to introduce on Thursday. They were, in fact, trying to introduce that today, on Tuesday, but they decided to delay. It seems because of some political calculations here. First of all, it would be disadvantage for the Liberal Party, politically speaking, because, of course, we are in a very sensitive situation right now where we don't have our president fully able to take his duties. So causing further disruption will not reflect very well in terms of public opinion for the opposition party. So that's obviously the first consideration. And the second consideration, I would say, would probably be the international ramification. President Han Duck-soo is very well known among our American allies, and he was the former U.S. ambassador from 2009 for about 3-4 years. So he's very well known to our foremost ally. He's been working in previous presidential offices. He's been in the foreign ministry, the trade ministry. So he's an experienced bureaucrat, and he knows how government works and how to run diplomacy as well. So it's not going to reflect very well internationally either if the opposition party decides to push through with the impeachment vote. And well, lastly, it seems that the reason that the opposition party was pretty furious today and decided to threaten the Prime Minister with impeachment was because he didn't put into effect the two bills that the Democratic Party of Korea pretty much railroaded through Parliament. They want to investigate the First Lady, the wife of President Yoon Suk-yeol, for various allegations of misconduct. They also want to introduce another bill to launch a special investigation on the president himself for inciting insurrection, as they claim. But of course, there are already investigations ongoing on the president, and the Prime Minister, being part of the Yoon Suk-yeol administration, it's not in his foremost interest to pass this or put into effect this bill. So what the opposition party did was give him a deadline for him to speak out about the two bills that they pushed through Parliament by the 24th, which is, of course, today, Tuesday. However, the Prime Minister actually has until January 1st to actually introduce to actually veto these two bills. So the opposition was really piling up pressure on him.
Okay.
And why this pressure? Well, it's because the bigger fish here that they're out to fry is the appointment of 3 constitutional court justices. Right now, there are only 6 justices who are able to make a ruling on President Yoon's impeachment, but all 6 of them need to make a unanimous decision to impeach him. But the full number for the Constitutional Court is actually 9 justices. So what the opposition party really want to do is fill those 3 vacant spots. So that's what they're actually really pressuring the Prime Minister to do.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Been talking to Miss Su Young-oh, who's a senior journalist. Madam Su Young, thank you for your insights and for talking to us today.
Thanks for having me.
Matt Gaetz' wife, Ginger, stands by the former Florida congressman as he's facing the allegations of sexual misconduct. This is after a House ethics report found that Gaetz spent tens of thousands of dollars on sex and drugs while serving as a U.S. congressman. 30-year-old Ginger frequently posts on social media showing support for her husband. In her bio, she proudly describes herself as Gaetz' wifey and shares their photos. Gaetz was Donald Trump's pick to serve as U.S. Attorney General. After he withdrew his name and resigned from the Congress, she posted Gaetz' photo on social media with the caption, "Unemployment has never looked so good." The Congressional Ethics Committee, after a year-long investigation into the allegations against Gaetz, found that there is substantial evidence that Gaetz violated House rules prohibiting prostitution, statutory rape, illicit drug use, impermissible gifts, special favors or privileges, and obstruction of Congress. The panel report says Gaetz made payments to women for sex and drugs across at least 20 separate occasions. It also states that in 2017, Gaetz paid a 17-year-old girl for sex, which would constitute statutory rape. The committee also found evidence that Gaetz received gifts in excess of permissible amounts in connection to a 2018 trip to the Bahamas. Now, the committee further believes that Gaetz knowingly and willfully attempted to obstruct the investigation. The report says he withheld evidence, failed to comply with subpoenas, and gave misleading responses. France has unveiled a new government which happens to be the 4th of the year, led by Prime Minister Francois Bayrou. The government includes members of the outgoing conservative-dominated team and some new figures from centrist or left-leaning backgrounds. The priority for Bayrou is to make sure his government can survive a no-confidence vote and that it passes a cost-cutting budget for 2025. The difficult job of delivering a budget plan falls to Eric Lombard, the new economy minister. He's the head of the Caisse du Dépôt, which is the investment arm of the French government. In his first statements, Lombard acknowledged the difficulty of the task he has been entrusted with. Former Prime Minister Elizabeth Borne has been named Education Minister. Another former Prime Minister, Manuel Valls, returned as Overseas Territories Minister, while former Interior Minister Gerald Damanin became Justice Minister. Both Defense Minister Sebastien and Foreign Minister Jean Noël kept their jobs. Conservative Interior Minister Bruno, who has vowed to crack down on illegal immigration, also stayed in his post. Parliament is in recess until January 13th next year, once lawmakers return. However, Bayrou and his team will likely be living day to day under the constant threat of no-confidence motions.
Accordé à seulement 33 ans et pour l'honneur d'avoir pu servir la France dans ce très grand ministère qu'est Bercy. Je voudrais évidemment saluer et remercier l'ensemble des ministres.
Magdeburg attack came at a time when Germany is going through political instability and early elections in February next year. Magdeburg attack puts the focus back on the country's immigration policy after a Saudi dissident drove through a Christmas market, killing 5 and injuring 200 others. Open borders is the issue which has helped Germany's far-right AfD to script its rise. But will Magdeburg attack overshadow other economic and social issues in the upcoming general elections? The latest poll conducted immediately after Magdeburg attack shows that the needle is not moving much. Support for centre-right CDU under Friedrich Merz went down 0.5% to 31% voter turn support. Meanwhile, the far-right Alternative for Germany, or the AfD, remains at number 2 with 19.5%. Support for Olaf Scholz's Social Democrats also went down by 0.5% to 16%, while German Greens gained 1 point and now have 12.5% backing. AfD is looking to use Magdeburg attack by making domestic security a key election campaign issue. AfD organized a rally in front of the Magdeburg Cathedral on Monday, where AfD's Chancellor candidate Alice Weidel addressed the crowd amid chants of deportation and re-immigration. And in Pakistan, Imran Khan's party PTI and the government sat down for a meeting on Monday. Lawmakers from jailed ex-Prime Minister's party discussed their leader's release. The meeting is the first of many as the government and Pakistan's largest opposition attempt to defuse political tensions. There are several contentious issues being discussed by both sides, but the release of Imran Khan from prison is a critical one. The next round of talks are scheduled to be held next year on January 2nd. WION's Pakistan Bureau Chief Anas Malik has all the details.
Well, the government and opposition both have huddled up and gone into negotiations, and the first round has ended up being fruitful. The second round is slated to be held on the 2nd of January, where the opposition will formally be putting forward its demands before the government in order to make a conducive governing environment which will be without protest or agitation. Now, this is what the government hopes. The PTI is the one that had put forward and these names for a negotiating committee. The demand was put forward by the PTI leaders on the floor of the House. The chairperson of the National Assembly, in fact, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Ayaz Sadiq, had requested the Prime Minister to form a negotiating committee on behalf of the government. And now the first rounds have turned out to be fruitful. It remains to be seen as to what the PTI demands would be. But for now, people are seeing these talks with a pinch of salt and some skepticism for the fact that in the past 1 year since the elections being held in the country, there hasn't been much political stability, and there are hopes, just hopes, that these talks can bring that much needed political stability for the incumbent government. Anas Malik in Islamabad, Pakistan for WION World is One.
And that's the latest on this episode of Race to Power. Thank you very much for watching. Stay with us. This is WION World is One.
To bring the benefits of the Subhash Chandra Show to your educational institution, teachers and students, send an invitation to Juhi Jha at juhi@such.org.in.
In a year that reshaped the world, 2024 brought seismic shifts, bold moves, and unforgettable moments that will echo through history around the globe. Wars continued to ravage nations, but new alliances and power shifts began to rewrite the rules of geopolitics. 2024 also bore witness to nature's fury. Climate change fueled deadly wildfires, devastating floods, and unprecedented storms. Devastating wars to technological revolutions. 2024 was the year that changed everything. The Game Changers 2024. The year that reshaped our future. Only on WION. World is One.
Know more, understand better, think ahead. Hello and a very warm welcome. You are watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Get the facts, not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you